Hi, my name is Lightworker, and I guess I should start with if you like this video, please follow me on FB and YT and Insta and all that. I'm just starting to expose the darkness and create a platform for the light, in a sense. And I stand for righteousness and truth, and I also am a chosen one. I'm a targeted individual for over 10 years. And I've learned a lot through that. I've grown a lot. But today, in this video, I thought, my first video was an introductory. In my second video, I thought, most people would wait 10 videos before they give you the answer that most targeted individuals have been searching for so long. I thought that was unfair because I wish someone gave me this knowledge when I was being targeted straight away. If I could gain this knowledge and implement it through wisdom, which is knowledge that is being used in the physical form. Wisdom is knowledge you act on. Okay? So this knowledge that I hope you turn into wisdom, I wish someone gave it to me, in my first fucking week of being gang-stalked and being targeted. Now, I'll jump straight in. I don't want to, fuck around. I want to give you just the answer to that because it's important. And hopefully you'll take this knowledge, implement it in your life, do whatever it takes to build a routine daily that truly implements these tools. And I hope this helps because that's my only intention. Okay, so the first thing about being gang-stalked is you must understand that I don't care if you're not spiritual, everything is spiritual. Okay? And even if you don't see it as spiritual, this world is a simulation. It is a matrix. Okay? Everything is just energy in a physical, dense form. Okay? Now, I don't want to overcomplicate the situation. I just want to drum that in. Everything is spiritual. Let's put it this way. To make it more simple, everything is electricity. Electricity is energy. Okay? Now, energy from a spiritual level is ether. Electricity from a scientific level is electricity. They're still energy. Okay? They're the same thing. Okay, so I guess I'll try and dumb this down in two ways for you. Everything is spiritual and everything is mental. Okay, I'll take it from I'll take to the best of my ability. I'm just winging it here. I know what I've done to make the gang stalking stop. So I'm going to explain it on two levels. I'm going to explain it on a spiritual level. Then I'm going to explain it on a psychological level. So the people that aren't yet spiritual or don't want to be spiritual can understand it from a mental level. So I can help as many people as possible. So everything is spiritual or everything is psychological. Okay, yeah. The first thing I would suggest you do is you must, no matter how hard it is, create boundaries within yourself. See, discipline is self-respect in action. You must be disciplined and willing, and I don't mean just willing, but I mean you must completely cut out. See, most of it isn't what we're doing that's wrong. It's not everything around us that's going on that's the issue. Okay? It's what we're allowing to go on because of our psyche or because of that's on a psychological level, on a spiritual level, because of the energies we're allowing in our energy. So the biggest thing to do with having the gang stalking stop is to cut shit out of your life that no longer serves your highest purpose. Now, the first thing I would suggest is all the people that you have in your life that you can't trust. And even if you do trust them and things, because whether we're spiritual or whether we're psychological, we can read energy on a spiritual level. If you want to go from a psychological level, I'll dumb it down a little bit for you. Everything is visible to the facial expression. Micro fucking emotional tics. Micro expressions. Body language. Read that shit way more than reading people's words. Okay? that will give you a good understanding. Read a room, the energy in a room, or the people's physical nature's expressions in a room. Okay? Now, I would love to make this just spiritual, but I want to help as many people as possible, so I have to do it on both levels. Okay? For me, I found it much easier to, when I finally surrendered to the fact that the spiritual realm is the first realm where energy comes from, and we're in another realm that's not the first realm. So everything that happens in the first realm happens way before it happens in the physical realm. The first realm, the spiritual realm, shit happens before it happens in the physical realm. Okay? That's my understanding of it. And what I can say from a psychological perspective is what happens in your mind happens way before it happens in the world around you. And what I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, you must cut shit out of your life that doesn't serve your highest purpose. People, places, things, and emotional states of being, mental patterns of thought, physical patterns of behavior. All those things that no longer serve your highest purpose, you must cut out. If you've got a friend that's a fuckwit, fuck them off. If you've got a drug addiction, fuck it off. If you've got a sex addiction, fuck that shit off. You know what I'm saying? These things, if you hang around trap spots because you're using drugs, fuck it off. Okay? These things really, really affect your frequency. And what I mean is your thought, okay, on a spiritual level, your frequency is your emotional state of energy. On a psychological level, it is your thought process that creates your emotions. Okay? Now, it's the same thing, it's just two different perspectives of it. Okay? So I'm trying to get as many people to understand this as possible, because everyone that is being targeted, everyone that is being gang-stalked deserves this gift of knowledge. It took me 10 fucking years to figure this shit out. And I spent a long time in fear, a long time in resentment, a long time in self-loathing, a long time as a drug addict, a long time as homeless, a long time being gang-stalked, a long time being targeted, a long time thinking I was crazy when I wasn't, a long time being gaslit by a whole society. And now I stand in my truth because I know. I have an inner knowing. I understand, understand, and overstand how I have stopped myself from being gang-stalked. I tried everything. I went to war with an international sex cult on a fucking military level, steez. And I was just a homeless drug addict at the time. Watching Black Ops helicopters go over my head and float above me and then stop, and rotate and shit like that multiple times. And fucking, I've seen shit you wouldn't believe, but it's all true. It's all true. And you don't have to believe it. This isn't, I just realized something. If you don't believe it, scroll the fuck on. This isn't for you. I'm trying to help people that have been in this situation. I'm not trying to please the masses. For me, this isn't about entertainment. This is about education. Okay? Now, so the first thing is cut all the shit out of your life that no longer serves your highest purpose. Now, the second thing, and what I would suggest, the way to do it, I did it, is cut one thing out at a time, because the second thing has to be implemented pretty quickly after you cut that thing out. And the second thing is you must replace it with something that's positive. Okay? And I don't mean you think it's positive. You must know it's positive. So you must look into something. Say it's a person. That you cut out of your life. A whole group of people. You know what I replaced with the whole group of people? All my friendship circle that I cut out? I replaced it with sobriety. I replaced it with self-love. Okay? That's what I replaced it with. And I used everything in my, everything at hand. I don't like the word disposal, that's a fucked up word. Everything at my hands, grabbable ability, I don't know what the word is for that, to implement these more positive things in my life. Okay, and it wasn't easy, but I did it because I knew that if I wanted to live a happy life and find peace, because I was fucking sick of just surviving, I needed to cut out everything in my life that wasn't helping me. I needed to have self-love, self-respect, and I needed to be responsible for my own destiny. They say make a plan or become part of someone else's. Now me, I can't do one day's work for another motherfucker. I can't stand working for another motherfucker. I sit there, I remember once I was working them, when was it? For example, I was working at this florist, once. Because I like trees and I like plants and I like flowers and shit. But I was working for this florist, and he kept, backbiting at me and telling me what to do in a real rude manner. And I'm sitting there cutting these flowers. I'm like, fuck this motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I can't work for someone else because I don't like feeling like I'm overstood. Yeah? I don't like feeling like I'm feeding a system. I'm serving a conglomerate, demonic entity, all in the name of a false reality and society we call a democracy, which is really a fucking slavery, international slavery encampment known as the First World Governments. Yeah? That are demonic and satanic and do unspeakable things to the most innocent and beautiful and broken people. And I'm so sick of it. Anyway, back to my point. Okay, so you cut out all the shit that doesn't serve you one by one. This is a process, okay? It's not, it's not, I'm not going to hand you this knowledge and you're like, I'm fixed. It's not going to work like that. You have to work at it. So you have to cut out all the shit that no longer serves your highest purpose. You have to then replace it with something that's positive for yourself. Now, if it's a person, it doesn't have to be people. It can be people. Connection is important. I replaced all the people that were trying to fuck my life up, that were friends to me, so-called friends, frenemies, with people in sobriety. People that didn't want to hurt me. People that do 12-step fellowship meetings. And that's what worked for me in order for me to stop using drugs. And then I had a lot of unresolved trauma and resentment towards society, people, government agencies, police, all that stuff. And I had to work through that stuff. I had a lot of resentments towards an ex that tried to frame me in this process. She assisted heavily in trying to frame me. I have friends that tried to frame me and try to kill me multiple times. And I was extremely bitter, extremely angry, but I wasn't hateful. I don't resonate with hate. I don't resonate with revenge. I was just withdrawn, and I was a hermit. I had a very long dark night of the soul, if you know what that is. A very long one, until I learned to trust in the process and the universe and let go. And the way I learned to do that, okay, so like I said, I'll reinforce it again because this is the most important thing. Cut out everything that doesn't serve your highest purpose. Replace those things with things that serve your highest purpose. The things you want, they're generally not what you fucking need. The things you need, they're the things you should implement in your fucking life. Now, the second thing I realized is I was extremely traumatized. I couldn't walk down the street and not think I was seeing someone trying to gang-stalk me when they weren't. Okay? I put every person in my life in the same box. Everyone's gang-stalking me because I couldn't differentiate my thoughts and my reality anymore, even though because they're so interconnected. And for so long I was, I was running from fucking government. I was running from the government. Not because of anything I'd done, but because they were trying to frame me and they were gang-stalking me at extremely fucking full-on levels, okay? And so I realized that I needed to start to deal with this trauma. So once again, use everything within your hand's length, or your disposal. I hate the word disposal. Right. And I firstly went and saw a trauma counsellor. Yeah? Now, if you're an Australian, luckily we have Medicare. You can get a mental health care plan from your doctor. Your doctor can then find you a counsellor who's a psychologist, and you can get 6 sessions with a psychologist for free under the Medicare. Yeah, you can actually make it 12 sessions or 10 or 12 sessions if you go back to your doctor and get them to extend it after the first 6. Now, that's what I did. Yeah, and I started unpacking all of the traumas and going through. They say you shouldn't force someone to relive a trauma. That's bullshit. You shouldn't re-traumatize the person by putting them in situations that create that trauma again. Very true. But for the person, I utilize the thing called shadow work. And shadow work is where you go into yourself. You sit and you close your eyes and you go into yourself and you imagine interacting with the person that you're resentful or you're in fear of or you're traumatized by. Okay? And you have a conversation. And this conversation is a back and forth conversation using your own mind that has you speak your fears or your hurt or your trauma. And then has your mind feed you back an answer. Feed you back the answers. Because what you're doing is you're stopping the trauma from fragmenting your subconscious. And you're re-assimilating your subconscious memory back into your conscious by working out the trauma by facing it internally. Okay? And I did this. I did this for a long period of time, And I thought it'd be a lot harder than it was, but it wasn't as hard as I thought it'd be. There was lots of times where I would finish my shadow work session in tears, but that was good. There's nothing wrong with crying. In fact, crying is an alchemization of emotion. Okay? When you're in anger, that's a bit of an issue because anger is a secondary emotion. Anger comes from sadness. Okay? The primary emotion that causes anger is sadness. And when you alchemize the sadness and you let it out by crying, you're freeing yourself of that sadness, which compounds your ability to reassimilate your subconscious trauma into your conscious. Okay? So that's very important. That was paramount to me. I got an app as well, okay, that I do every day just to clean my subconscious and keep my consciousness in right order. And it's called Shadow Work by Mindberg Institute. Okay? It's a very good app. I use it every day. And it just gives you a couple of tasks to perform in terms of being your true, authentic self, not being complacent, and living in your truth, and like things like responsibility, self-discipline. It just teaches you that stuff. And they also have a course on there about trauma that you can utilize the app for to go through. I think it costs about $20 a month, the app. Anyway, back to what I was saying. I did that and I felt so much better after a while of doing shadow work. I also started realizing that I was quite anxious. The trauma, a lot of the traumas were getting resolved because of the shadow work, because of the counseling. And I didn't really go through I wouldn't say I went through a long-term grief process. I think the process of grief is flawed. because it's a process you go through if you don't really face your traumas or your fears or your resentments. This is my personal opinion. I think the grief process is what you go through if you don't truly look and face and get the lesson from that trauma, that fear. Okay, because the whole point of shadow work is to go within yourself, to have this conversation. You might have to do it a whole bunch of times. Repeat the attempt to resolve the thought that created the thought that created the trauma, to assimilate it back into your conscious. You might have to repeat the shadow work over and over and over and over and over again until you resolved it. Because in my personal opinion, shadow work doesn't always bring the whole trauma to your conscious. I think that would overload your mind. What it does is it brings increments back into your conscience each time. Okay? So, and once you've done the shadow work, it gets you to a point of not acceptance, approval. Not saying it was okay, saying that it no longer affects you. Okay? So approval meaning, acceptance can still leave traces of trauma. Approval, in other words, you look at the situation in love. And the reason why you look at the situation in love is because of the lesson and the self-growth you gained from that trauma. And that's weird. I know it sounds fucked up. I mean, I was, as a child, I was abused for 10 years in horrible ways, And that trauma stuck with me for a long time. And I did a lot of fucking shadow work to deal with that trauma. But I not only forgive, the person who did that, I sit in compassion of the person who did that. And the reason why is because I don't want to live in just accepting a situation. That's what we've been doing for ages. I want to live in compassion of a situation. Okay? I don't want to approve. I don't want to just accept. I want to have compassion. Okay? And the reason why I wanted to do the shadow work is because I felt so weighed down by my traumas. I felt so weighed down by my resentments. I felt so weighed down by things that were outside of myself that had affected me. And it started to affect my mental. It started making me really fearful. It started making me really overwhelmed. I used to have panic. I was homeless. I was on drugs, running from government level gang stalking, having panic attacks, sleeping in parks. And I mean, like on the park bench. That's where my life had gotten to because of being a targeted individual. And also because I was, I had no solutions to this ongoing situation. Okay, so back to my point. Sorry, I keep going off track. I keep rambling. I just want to punch in the knowledge, because it's really important. I explain all this stuff. So you got cut out everything that doesn't assist you and help you reach your highest purpose. Replace those things with things that do help you, your highest purpose and your highest self. Do the shadow work for the situations, people, places, and things that you're affected by. I realized, now this is the next thing, I realized I was really anxious, and I was still quite, not fearful, because the shadow work dealt with a lot of the fear. I was anxious and a bit lost. So I started doing meditation. Now, the way I started doing meditation, because I can now, but for a long time I couldn't sit in silence for a long period of time. I got more and more anxious. So what I did is I downloaded an app called, what was it called? Insight Timer. Now, this is a great app. You can either choose to pay for it or just utilize the majority of the app for free. It's a great app. I use it every day. Okay, now Insight Timer, I think it costs like $80 or $90 a year to use, or you can just use most of it for free. And Insight Timer has like 5 to 25-minute meditations that are mindfulness meditations, breath work meditations. They also have like music that you can listen to that is calming music, spiritual music. They have manifestation meditations and a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, now I used this app to start to calm my mind down, because I realized if I spend 10 minutes in the present, and through a few meditations that I did, I learned that the best way for me to meditate is to go back to my breath. If I close my eyes and I just focus on me breathing and the sensation of me breathing, it's bringing me into the present, which is one of the main purposes of meditation, to make us present. Now, what this did was made me able to, instead of rapidly go about my day in responses to things and situations in a hypersensitive manner, it calmed me, because I also learnt to, before I make any decision, before I do anything, before I stand up, before I turn my head towards someone, breathe. Okay? And then I was able to go about my days without rushing, which stopped a lot of the anxiety. Yeah? Now, the other thing I'd add about the first thing about cutting out the people is I would suggest that you find some healthy group to go to classes for or join. If there's something you're interested in, go to classes. Don't just look it up online. Go to a class once a week. For me, it was 12-step fellowship meetings that I do every day. That's where I get my connection. And 12-step fellowship meetings are amazing. They are paramount to my life and living in my higher purpose today. But I don't want to get into that. I just want to point out the things that I needed to do to stop being gang-stalked. Now, so we got cut out all the shit that doesn't serve your higher self. Replace them with shit that does serve your higher self. Do shadow work. Do counseling. Do the things to free yourself from the things that are holding you down mentally. Meditate so that you're not so overwhelmed, and you can be present. Yeah? And if you do these 4 things, like with fearless honesty and rigorousness, and be thorough and be guarded in your endeavors, you will free up a lot of your energy. You will free up a lot of your mental space. You will free up a lot of your negative frequency that you've been living in. And it will give you the ability to be around people, do things, start to implement things in your life that raise your frequency. Now, this is the whole point I was getting to. The way you stop being gang-stalked is to raise your frequency on an emotional, mental, and spiritual level. Okay? Because if you know anything about loose harvesting, right, these lower frequency entities or people or whatever beings, right, on Earth, they feed off low frequency energy. So if you're in fear, they can feed off that. If you're in hate, they can feed off that. If you're in vengefulness, they can feed off that. I think the biggest one for them is fear. They love feeding off fear. They love feeding off trauma, which is sick. So sick. They love inverting shit. And they love playing sides and creating sides. The point of raising your frequency is, if you raise your frequency, Then you'll learn to stop living in fear, which fixes your first chakra. Then you'll learn how to manifest, which fixes your you'll learn how to stand in your truth, right? I won't go into the chakras, it's too much. I'll be honest with you, I don't know too much about the chakras, but I know your solar plex is where you manifest from. And your lower self, which is your, I don't even know the name of it, your pelvis groin chakra, right? That is where fear comes from, and magic. Okay, and I really want humanity to raise and ascend in frequency. Okay? And I know for a fact that the way I got the gang stalking to stop for good was by raising my frequency on a mental, spiritual level. And what that did was gave me the ability to choose where I place my emotions. Because what these low frequencies people feed off is not actual frequency, it's the emotion in the frequency that gives off the vibration of the frequency. That's what they feed off. So if your emotions, are in fear, they're having a big lunch. Yeah? If your emotions are in fear, knowledge, authenticity, not fear, love. Fuck that up. It's love, education, knowledge, compassion, authenticity. Those things, they're very high frequencies. And the point is why I'm trying to explain this is because if you have a low frequency being trying to affect you and you're on a high frequency, they have nothing to attach to because you're not on their frequency. So they can't affect you. And this will eventually make the gang stalking stop. Because the reason why they're gang stalking is for two reasons. To harvest the loosh, which is your energy on a low frequency. Well, loosh is energy. But harvesting the loosh, which is low frequency based energy because they're low frequency beings, to traumatize and fragment the psyche through ways of manipulation and mind control, which is really what gang stalking is. And eventually the end point is to have you end your own life in a prison cell because you're framed for something terrible that these groups and organizations have done. Now, it's important to implement those four things. Now, the fifth thing that's very important as well is because doing these four things won't take up your whole day. What should take up the majority of the day once you be doing these four things, cut out the shit that doesn't serve your highest purpose. Replace them with things that serve your highest purpose. Shadow work, meditation. Do as much of this as you can. Remember that cutting people out of your life and places out of your life involves two important things: discipline and boundaries. Okay? Fundamental. If you have no discipline, you have no boundaries, people are just going to walk all over you. You're going to be a fucking doormat. And no one wants to be a doormat. Yeah? So, after you've done those four things, what you must do after you've been doing those four things for a while, and your day is pretty, I say, if between the hours of 9 to 12 o'clock you're doing those four things, what I would suggest is from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock you spend time creating. Okay? And the way I found it was best to create is, and I'll put it in this sense, it's very simple. Whatever you love to do, as long as it ain't a crime, and whatever you love to do, as long as it's for the greater good and harm to no one, do it. Do it obsessively. Do it obsessively. But what I suggest you do is all the things you learnt from the trauma, from the shadow work, from learning how to use boundaries, from cutting people out, from all the stuff you went through being gang-stalked, turn it into power. Turn your pain into power through your creations. Yeah? Because everything is energy. And if you harvest within yourself that amount of energy from that amount of knowledge, and you lead in the things that you want to create through your emotions surrounding that knowledge, once you've done the shadow work and you're no longer in fear of that knowledge, right? You will create amazing things and you will be very successful. That's basically it. 5 things. I'll say it again. Cut out the shit that doesn't serve your highest purpose. Replace them with things that serve your highest purpose. And I mean, when I say cut out things, cut out everything. People, places, things, situations. Cut them out. If someone comes to you and starts making you feel in a negative way, just walk the fuck away from them. Don't entertain bullshit. Don't entertain illusions. Yeah? If you're feeling worried because of the stuff going on in the news, stop watching the fucking news. Replace it with shit that really nourishes you emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. Okay? The things you love to do, your hobbies. I'm not talking about a 9-to-5 job. Everyone's going to make money. I understand that. But I promise you, if you dedicate yourself to these 5 things and implement them in your life for, I don't know, a year, every day, rigorously and honestly and responsibly, implement them in your life every day, and you're also creating at the same time every day using the method that I just told you, you will be successful. You won't need to work a 9-to-5. I guarantee that. Anyway, I hope this helped. If you like my video, please follow me on YT, FB, Insta. I also make music. I'll put that in the link below. I'm writing a book. It's going to be a good book. So I hope this helps, because it took me over 10 years to figure this out. Thank you. Peace.